Oh, wow.
Okay, we will go ahead and get started. So, Dedwada Nohanyo, Lindsay Kondi ni Gyaso, Gayokono Niwo Kwenzoda. Greetings, my name is Lindsay Condi. I'm from Cayuga Nation. I'm one of the Diversity and Inclusion Co-Coordinators for the Association of Women Surgeons National Med Student Committee. I'm originally from Wilson, New York, but I go to school at University of Arizona in Tucson, and I applied into plastic surgery this fall. My co-coordinator, Olivia Opera, will be joining us a bit later. She's caught up in the OR, but she's originally from Nigeria and is a third-year medical student at Ross. So as many of you guys have joined us before, I'll just kind of give this brief intro. But we interview women surgeons from ethnically diverse backgrounds and experiences. We hope their stories inspire and encourage you all, and that by highlighting these voices, that we can continue to increase representation of all races, ethnicities, genders, and beliefs in surgery. So this month, we're celebrating Native American Heritage Month by interviewing these fabulous Indigenous women in surgery. Here with us today is Dr. Jennifer Erdrich and Natasha Hilt, a fourth-year medical student. A little bit later, Dr. Lori Alvord will be joining us. So I guess what we'll do is we'll have our panelists introduce themselves. I'll ask them some questions, and hopefully we'll have some time a little bit later for the audience to ask questions. So, Dr. Erdrich, would you like to begin with your background, tribal affiliation, where you work now?
Sure. So my name's Jennifer Erdrich. I am Turtle Mountain Ojibwe on my father's side. Our reservation in Dakota. It's all the way up by the Canadian border, just like 10 miles more, and we'd be Canadian First Nations. I grew up in San Diego, though. So my parents were the only ones to leave North Dakota in our family. We have a really big family. I kind of figured out early on as a child I wanted to be a doctor, but I never thought surgeon. And we can talk about that more. That was a late discovery. It was my last clerkship in med school, and was really a game changer for me. And so I did general surgery residency at Stanford, and then I did a fellowship in surgical oncology at Cedars-Sinai. And now I'm on faculty at the University of Arizona, and have appointments that allow for clinical outreach and research with our neighboring tribal nations.
Awesome. It's great having you here. Natasha, would you like to go?
Yeah. Hi, Yate. I'm Natasha. I'm Navajo. I'm from a small town called Oak Springs, Arizona, which is kind of near Windrock. I grew up there, and I'm currently a fourth-year med student. And actually, I'm not really a med student anymore as of 2 weeks ago. I finished all of my fourth year, so I'm kind of done with med school right now. I applied to OB-GYN. Thank you. I applied to OB-GYN. I kind of found out late also that I really like the surgical aspect. I think I found out a little late, but I really enjoyed OB-GYN, everything about women's health. And hopefully as I'm doing interviews, yeah, I'm hoping I can get there, but it's really nice to join you. I just did a rotation too with Dr. Erdrich, so it's really nice to see you too.
It was so
Awesome.
great.
Well, I'm glad you came over to the dark side, Natasha. I guess we'll move into our next question. So, what led to your decision to pursue a surgical career?
I guess I can go first. So, I have to go first, right? Because I was hinting at it. I didn't even know that'd be but I thought that I would do something more like internal medicine. I think you hear early on personalities gravitate toward which field. And then, at one point I even kind of, I think, asked one of our advisors, can I skip the surgery rotation? Like, let's do it last, because I would never do that. And then when I was on the rotation, I just loved it. Like, I think that the hours were longer, but they were passing by faster. And I mean, there were things that from our background is relevant. So, like, I consider my grandmother my first attending, like my first faculty coach in a way, because she taught me our beadwork when I was 12 years old, is when she started. And there was this familiar process in the OR of like the way she would hover over my shoulders and like coach me to do these things with my hands that was really intricate. And I could focus like that as a child for, like 8 hours would go by. We would just keep beating. And I felt that kind of familiarity in the OR, like a quiet time, long hours where you focus, and someone coaching you and teaching you a craft, right? And passing that on. And so I think that was like the first click for me that made me like surgery. And then, thereafter, just everything fell into place. Like, I liked what we were studying. If it meant that you spend your weekend, doing this, whatever this is in medicine for you, that it has to feel like it's a weekend well spent. And if you have to read certain things and go to meetings about a certain topic, like all of that was surgically related felt like it flew by. So I think those were some of the things that were important. And then just being really struck by the relationship between a surgeon and their patient, how much trust they have to put into you. And that was just really profound to me. And I really thought that surgeons had such a wonderful longitudinal relationship with their patients. And that was something that I was always looking for and thought would be in medicine, but really found it to be strongly reverberating for me as meaningful in the surgical context.
That's amazing. Wow. I really thank you so much for sharing that. Natasha, I know you kind of hinted at it as well. So why did you decide OB-GYN versus you were considering family med, right?
Yeah, I was considering family med, and I feel the same thing. So when I was growing up, we used to butcher sheep a lot because my grandma loved to eat mutton, and I was really fascinated by anatomy in the beginning. And then it kind of grew into obviously doing pre-med, and I actually was a tutor in gross anatomy for bio students in Phoenix College, and I actually really liked it. And then when I got to med school eventually, which is a whole nother process, I really enjoyed the gross anatomy lab, and I was kind of shocked because, as a Navajo person, dead bodies are really taboo, and I actually found it really, it was like a part where I could just sit and dissect for hours if I wanted to. And my other the other students on my dissection team were always like, oh yeah, like Natasha's gonna come in later and spend like a whole evening. So I would come in on my own because that lab was open all the time and just work by myself with headphones, and I could spend like a lot of time in there. And I actually really enjoyed dissecting. So that was kind of an indication. And when I got to third year clerkship, I didn't have the best experience, surprisingly, in surgery. I did my surgical rotation at a rural site, and it was, long story short, I didn't have a good experience. But when I was in the OR, I got to work with an indigenous surgeon and in my third year, and I just felt like, wow, this is really amazing. The things that, how you can just get lost, the same thing. I felt the exact same thing, just like I was in lab again. So I really sort of liked that part, and I just couldn't give it up. Not that I would have to, but the OR was a really good thing. And mentors were really important for me. OB-GYN mentors were extremely important for me, and I think they kind of like showed me how I could have best of both worlds. So
that's awesome. Great. Well, I guess next question. What barriers did you encounter as a woman of color when pursuing or through applications in surgery?
I can answer this because I don't have, I'm still applying currently. So right now I mean, Lindsay also, you just applied, so it's pretty terrifying right now.
Yes.
But also like as a mom too, like I think I was even nervous, like do I even say I'm a mother? I had my daughter in med school, and that's something that I didn't think I would be able to do. But I think I just let all of that shine through my personal statement. And so this is me. I'm a mom. I'm a first generation college student. I have all these struggles, struggled through med school, but I'm here and I want to do OB-GYN. So we'll see. Hopefully it works out with my interviews.
Well, fingers crossed. I know it will. And your daughter will be so proud of you. I'm sure your whole family is. Dr. Erdrich, any barriers you faced at all?
So, I mean, for me, it's not lost on me that phenotypically I don't look the way someone's going to expect for Native American, right? So there are like a whole host of my Native sisters that have faced something more significant than I have. I think there are other ways that have become barriers in that, like, I think that the way I see things, the perspective I have, and the approach I take to medicine and the way I carry myself very much favors my Native side of the family, my father's side. So I've wondered, well, is that just because that's my family, or that's because it's our culture? But I've found that what has been a struggle at every phase is that I tend to speak slower. I really listen a long time before I offer an answer, and have to really be certain that I have an audience I can trust. And that doesn't compete well with students who quickly volunteer answers or throw out their opinions. And I think that in a way, you become less seen if you're not fast on the draw, or if you have this approach that thinks about like the whole picture. Sometimes that's not well received because people want you to be focused and get through something fast. And when you bring up these other factors that you see as relevant to a person's holistic health, it's kind of shooed away. And so like that has been something that I think has been a struggle, that to the extent that in some situations I have to like almost flip my thinking and say like, be like mom, be like my mom's side of the family, because sometimes I can't navigate a situation when I'm doing my default and just being like taking the approach of like what I know to be true from my other side of the family. It's kind of long-winded. I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I think especially like in surgery and in the OR, they ask questions, and Natasha's probably experienced this as well, and they want an immediate answer and just to pause and to think and reflect. I think it does kind of go against the grain of what may be normal, but obviously it's worked for you to get you to where you are now.
I think people really appreciate it. So like it's kind of tough in medicine. There's like a dual system in terms of the metrics that help you accelerate through training, through school and training. It's like, how fast can you be and how confident are you? But people actually really love it when you're quiet with them and patient and you think through every answer. And they don't, my experience is they don't see when you say it could be this, or this, and we could do, X, Y, or Z. Like in schooling and training, you're almost punished for thinking that, because it's better to appear as though like you know exactly what it is and you
Mm-hmm.
have this way to get there, and you get good grades for that. But patients are going to grade you highly that you were patient and open and honest with them and explored every avenue on their behalf before committing. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I guess kind of switching gears, we'll go for positive experiences. Any positive experiences instead of barriers? Have the communities accepted you? Do you get to work with native populations? What's the reaction to seeing someone who looks like them or identifies with their culture?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a positive experience. I had the privilege of um, working as an OB-GYN at my home community in Fort Defense, Arizona, and it was my last rotation actually of med school, and it was just so rewarding just thinking like how my own community responded to me, and a lot of them were really excited. And not one time did everybody was just saying, please come back,
Oh,
we really want you. And it just made me feel like, wow, this is a path that I just felt out of the whole 5.5 years of med school. After you go through all of that, it makes you feel good. And I think that's a positive experience of having, and also just as a mother and OB-GYN, like I giving birth, I think is not that you have to give birth to know to be an OB-GYN, but I think that it definitely helps to understand experiences, but also experience as a Native woman who experienced trauma and all of that other stuff, and how that plays out in their health and women's care and their birthing. So but it was extremely nice to be in the OR and be a brown woman and know what I'm doing. It was really amazing, and mostly obviously just to talk to the patients because
mm-hmm.
they definitely trust you more,
Mm-hmm.
and to know that you're from their community, that that immediately they ask your clans, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's a nice experience, and so I think that's definitely a positive for sure.
That's awesome. I can definitely, I guess, identify with that because I wear my tribal badge reel when I go see patients. And even though I haven't met any like Canadian or First Nations people, they always ask about my badge reel. And if they're indigenous, we always connect and ask about tribes and different cultural things. So I definitely relate to that. Dr. Erdrich, what about you? Any positive experiences?
it's actually similar to what you both described, just like that. Um, so like I have a beaded badge, and that helps to just kind of make it like a safe place for a native patient to ask or inquire, and then that relief, they feel like, oh, okay, you understand and like can help me navigate how do you go from like the tribal facility through purchase referred care to like into a tertiary system like ours, and then to like the comfort that comes from that. I think it opens a lot more in terms of that relationship with the patient and the trust they have in you. Um, so that's always positive, that you can feel like yes, I'm a safe, I can provide a safe, patient-centered home for you.
Yeah, it's such a powerful feeling, I think, for the patients and for you as well. Um, I guess, do you guys happen to know of any resources for those of Indigenous heritage who may be thinking about a surgical career in OB/GYN or other surgical avenues?
You know, I was one of those students who just did everything. So any program that's out there, I probably did. As an undergrad, even as a high school student. And in as undergrad, if those of you who are thinking of applying to med school, I there are programs for natives who are interested in medicine. Harvard has one. The summer medical education enrichment program, they have them all over the country. I think it's also dentistry too. That one I went to at UCLA, and that was really, really good. So like all these little programs that I did all help contribute. And Association for American Indian Medical, Association for American Indian Physicians, AIIP, they did a lot as well. They have pre-med workshops that I did and that I got a lot of contacts through. And I think just in terms of medicine, but then also making those connections with surgeons, also with OB-GYNs, is really important. And I think when you see a surgeon who looks like you, you're definitely, it just clicks in your mind like, wow, I could actually do this because this person did this, or this person was a first generation, so I can see myself. So I think those things are really important. So those are the professional organizations. Obviously, Association for American Indian Medical Students, ANAMS, is a really good place that I was involved with for the whole time I was in med school. And any research opportunities I think is really good. But that's a lot, but sorry.
No, it's great. It's wonderful. I'll have to like make a list and send it out. Dr. Erdrich, any sort of like professional organizations or resources for med students, residents, attendings?
Yeah, I can think of one more. I mean, Natasha covered so many. Like I agree with all the ones you said, and AIP is also, I think, so important. And then if someone knows that they're already interested in perhaps oncology, which I did, I kind of figured that out in med school, and so I ended up getting involved with the Cure pipeline, CURE. It's through the NIH NCI, and they actually have all kinds of programming that starts even as young as high school. Like I added it, or I joined it in residency, and it helped to place me in a really terrific research fellowship opportunity that through which I also obtained my MPH. So it can help you with schooling, can help you with connecting to a mentor and research. And it's for underrepresented minorities. So, you know, that I think is something that if you're Native and you think you might want to go into cancer, it is cancer related, but it was pretty tremendous.
Awesome. And I know just having gone through a million sub-Is and gone to conferences during my research year, there are a ton of travel scholarships available, usually for minority students as well. So any third-year medical students applying or thinking about the sub-Is, definitely like look for stuff like that through the programs and the conferences. Moving on to the next question. Traditional healing is kind of this hot topic on whether it should be included under billing, whether it is evidence-based medicine. So I'm just curious if you have any ideas on how traditional modes of healing may be incorporated into everyday practice.
Natasha, do you have an answer?
You know, I do. The place that in my hometown in Fort Defiance, they actually have traditional medicine men on site so that you can consult and you can send patients there. So like, for instance, if we have a patient who who had, let's say, sexual trauma or any trauma previously, then if she felt more comfortable, then we could send her and do like dual sort of, so she can get certain forms of healing and then get healing from us. And so from a Western medical perspective. And so I think that combining is definitely a good thing. In terms of just like everyday practice, I think it's just really important to even, especially with birthing, there's a lot of traditional birthing methods and that is taught up there, at least. And I know a lot of tribes have their own birthing traditions. I know we were trying to get sage and cedar, if that was, you know, a okay thing when women were in labor. So like things like that is just sort of getting incorporated into everyday practice. But in terms of, I don't know if you meant like in terms of healing for us or or for
No, that was perfect.
Okay.
No, what you said, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's incredible they're doing that stuff with the birthing techniques. I think a lot of people assume that like traditional medicine is just herbs and like it's, I think Western people tend to think it's more pills you ingest, but there's so much more to traditional healing. It's more, I feel like, at least in my culture, it's very spiritual as well, different ceremonies. Dr. Erdrich, do you have any ideas?
Well, in terms of your question about policy and, you know, should it be something that you can bill for, I think that that is like an individualized answer, and that each tribe and tribal facility should decide for themselves. And that's, you know, a way of exercising sovereignty to decide, is this something that is billable? Because I can see the pros and cons to it, right? And so I think it has to be decided at each tribal facility, and that's consistent with how things are done currently to incorporate it. Like Natasha just gave us, you know, several examples. Every facility that I've interacted with has worked with traditional healers in their own ways. Like there's many ways of including traditional healing as there are tribal facilities, I think. So it means that we have to be flexible then how that rendered and if it's billed or not.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. Any suggestions on how the surgical community and medicine at large may best support natives in medicine and surgery?
I have several ideas, but I'll let Natasha go first.
Actually, you can you go first?
Sure, yeah. Because I think there's so many different levels at which to support, right? So obviously recruitment and retention is a major issue. And that, how do you even begin to tackle that? Because it's not just that the Department of Surgery has to do that. Like every university has to have a presence that really starts before med school, you know, with partnering tribal nations on how do you increase interest in the health sciences, and how do you support students in the pipeline early. But then, you know, from that all the way to, okay, now how do we get, like, you two right now are applying, so how do we support you through your applications? And I think that part, while there probably should be a like a systems wide response to that, it kind of falls onto like individual faculty shoulders, really, which is important and it's powerful. That, you know, if I vouch for you, if I vouch for both of you, you know, you guys identify a program, and if you let me know you want to, you know, be at this place, or like, let's see who I know as a connection, and then I can advocate for you. And if I as one surgeon have advocated for both of you, and then you go on to be faculty and you inspire other students who want to follow your footsteps, then you advocate for them, right? Like there is kind of a beautiful and powerful dynamic that happens amongst Native faculties and Native faculty and trainees, in that, like, the mentorship becomes multi-directional, right? Like I have med students who maybe, I've coached, but then I watched them coach undergrads, and then and then the undergrads might even have ideas for the med students about different ideas or opportunities. So I think that the personal connections are a really important network, but then also we need support, even at the clinical side of things. Like we need to be able to support patients and community members to come, to feel safe, that they can come see us at a tertiary center and know that they have allies here who can help them, navigate kind of like a higher level of care when the time calls for it. So like, it's not just, it's all the way from students to patients as community members, that there's a lot that can be done. And I have too many ideas on it. I mean, we would take up the whole hour about how it can be done, but I think there are ways to like increase our presence at tribal facilities. The reason, not everything has to be that patients from communities come to us and we treat ourselves as like the epicenter of the universe. Like there, what if we do some programming where we go out on site and maybe you can't do an operation at the facility if they don't have the ORs or the infrastructure to support the needs that the patient has after that. But we could potentially, see them for pre-op and post-op care, and what kind of difference would that make, So I could rant about this, but I see we have Alvord, so we should introduce her, and I bet she has ideas too, and Natasha has.
Absolutely. Thanks for getting us started with the ideas, Dr. Erdrich. Dr. Alvord, wonderful for you to join us. I know daylight savings kind of got a little bit confused, and that was my fault, so I apologize. I'm just happy that you were able to join. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm still trying to get figured out with the camera and holding my phone and all that, but sure. Yat A, Lori Arviso Alvord, Yinshe, Tsinnajinnié do Ashi'hii Bashishchin. I am from Crown Point, New Mexico, and I was raised there. My father's family is Navajo Diné. My mother's family is Biligana, white, and I am a general surgeon by training, and was trained in Stanford in med school and residency, and I am currently working in Eastern Washington for the Yakima Nation and the Yakima Valley Farm Workers.
Thank you. And you are the first Diné surgeon, and you authored a book, so you are a woman of many talents and recognition.
Oh yeah, that happened too.
So we were just going through some questions. I don't know, have you met Natasha and Dr. Erdrich?
No, I have not.
Okay. Did you guys want to introduce?
I did meet you through Carrie. We were like on a boat in Page. That was
really?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Oh, okay then. Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. It was
yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that was kind of random. We both of my friend we rented a boat, and that's how I met.
I'm remembering. That's right. Yes. 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 Good to see you again.
Anyways, I'm a 4th-year med student applying to OB-GYN, so.
Wonderful. Okay, great.
Excellent.
And hi, Jennifer. I have not met you in person either, but good to meet you.
We met in 2005. It was so long ago. I was a first-year med student, and I introduced you at a talk at Harvard, and so like you're like an idol, I think, to all of us. So and it's everyone.
Okay.
The whole nation knows you.
Well, I'm just getting embarrassed because I am saying I didn't. I'm sorry. So, okay.
No,
I'm
you're fine.
sorry.
You're fine.
It like reflects your celebrity, like, you know.
Stop. Please stop. I'm just another native. I'm just another native person. So, yeah.
Well, we're so thankful to have you join us. We have communicated via email before. My name's Lindsay. I'm a fourth year med student,
Yes.
applied into plastic surgery this fall. And I'm First Nations Indigenous. I'm Upper Cayuga Nation.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Great.
And
So,
plastics. Incredible.
thanks. We were just chatting about how traditional modes of healing may be incorporated into everyday practice, at ways to best support Natives in the surgical community and in medicine at large. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Wow. Okay. Obviously, it depends on the tribal community that you're working with, and their own healing belief systems and understandings of healing. But I was just thinking, driving back to home that today that one of the things that that we do is if you took it in the broadest way, is we help them on their journey through healthcare. We create we try to create an easy path for them. We try to generate. I think about flow state, if you know what I mean. It's a way of going through seamlessly, effortlessly, and all what that really means is that it's a way that incorporates their own beliefs and values and traditions. And so it is, of course, specific healing practices, but it's everything. It's having people speaking the language. It's having the food that people want to eat. It's having the art around that people want to have around. It's facilitating the ability of family to be with patients. It's allowing them to bring things that are important to them with them. Like, I remember talking to people when I first started doing these things. I remember talking about allowing people to bring sacred objects with them to the operating room, like eagle feathers or corn pollen bags for us, or things like that. And people were just sort of like, wait, what did you just say? You know, the Bilaganas in particular, they would be like, what? You know? And you can do it. You can put it in a plastic bag and they can come with it. And it doesn't interfere with anything. And yet it makes them feel safe and protected, and it also, you're mirroring their beliefs, and you're endorsing what they think is important. And I guess all of that is what I'd say is what we do and why we do it. And for us, it was like allowing and accepting and encouraging people to have either prayers or ceremonies before or after, or even in the hospital, before or after surgery, or in the hospital. And it was trying to be respectful of our own healers, and trying to listen to them. I've made journeys just to listen to them because their wisdom is amazing. So I guess that would be my first answer. The short, I could go all night, but yeah,
Oh, thank you. Those are definitely wonderful suggestions. And I know Natasha was talking about some of the traditional birthing techniques and ceremonies that take place where she's from. So I love that you brought that up as well, with different modes of healing.
Yeah, I think the like how people can help, how the surgical community at least could help Natives in medicine or in surgery and in medicine, is just uplifting in general. I mean, as a medical student, it's hard to think about if you were a med student a long time ago, but as going through it now, mentors are really the people that keep you going. I'm sure as surgeons too, you have mentors and you keep in contact with them, but they are so incredibly helpful. And I definitely, coming from a first generation, I couldn't talk to anybody about, what I was interested in or how I was going to get to the point. And so it really helped to have these mentors who could say, like, yeah, if you want to do surgery, you should do it because, you can do it. And so I think just that part aspect as a med student has been so important for me, at least.
Yeah. Someone just validating you and saying it is possible is very, very powerful.
Oh, so powerful. I mean, when I first met Ron Lujan, who was a general surgeon from Taos Pueblo and San Juan Pueblo, I mean, even just seeing somebody who was native that was a surgeon was mind-blowing for me because I'd never seen one. And when you haven't seen one, you don't even know if that's something you could ever do. And then you see somebody and they're surgeon and they're operating, and all of a sudden it starts to affect your whole energy. It's like, okay, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can do this. And I told it in part of the Scalpel and the Silver Bear. I talked about this, but he literally made it possible for me to be a surgeon. And the way he did that was he taught me all the major general surgery operations and took me through them and taught me pre-op and post-op care all before my third year core surgery rotation.
Wow.
So when I went on the floors, and I was at Stanford, when I went on the floors, I already knew. I mean, I knew how to work up a patient. I knew how to write an op note. I knew how to write the orders post-op because I've been doing that. And it kind of blew people away. And it was I wasn't any better than the other students, but I already had that experience with my mentor, with my native mentor, and it put me way up. And I got honors. I got invited to apply to the training program at Stanford, and that's how I wound up training at Stanford. But if I hadn't met him, I would have just been, my usual clueless self, probably. So.
Wow. Well, hopefully
That's
one
what
day
a mentor will do.
Yeah. Hopefully one day Natasha and I will be able to do that when we're attendings, like you and Dr. Erdrich. We'll pay it forward. I'd already asked some of these questions to Dr. Erdrich and Natasha, but you spoke a lot about the support that you received. Any barriers that you faced? I know you touched on this in your book as well, but for those who have not read it.
Sure. I mean, probably, I think there were a lot of barriers. I mean, I came off the reservation. Crown Point is right on the edge of the Navajo reservation. I didn't know what I was getting into. I went to Dartmouth. It was a world I didn't have any concept of before I went there. I didn't know what an Ivy League school was. And when I got there, I thought I was a smart student. And I actually could hold my own in literature and social sciences. But my school, my Rev school, had not prepared me to take science courses with these students coming from the best backgrounds you can imagine. And I got a C- in chemistry and a D in calculus, and I just thought I was not smart enough to go into anything in the sciences, anything. And I was so ashamed, and I was afraid, and I self-doubted, and I really never would have gone back to the sciences if I hadn't actually wound up kind of falling in love with neurosciences at the very last minute. At the very end of I was doing a psych major, and I took a neurobiology course, and I had never seen the brain, the anatomy of the brain, the physiology, and it just was captivating. Next thing I knew, I had graduated, and I was a research assistant in a neurobiology lab. And those guys started telling me to think about med school. Well, here I was with no pre-med courses. Like, yeah, how am I going to do that? Because I bombed out of those. But I went back to University of New Mexico and took those courses. And I wasn't competing with I was competing with state students, not Ivy League students. And I did fine. I had A's and B's. And then I applied to med school. So that was a barrier, just really not being well prepared coming into college and then med school. I always felt like I was catching up because a lot of people in pre-med had I don't know, genetics or biochem or any of those courses. I had none of that. I just had the bare bones. I had my 1 year chem, 1 year of organic chem, 1 year bio, physics, that and math, and that was it. So yeah, I was always playing catch up. I was also very shy, very introverted, so much shyer and more introverted. I mean, I was your classic, even though I know I don't look full blood Navajo, but I was so introverted. I just was hard to talk to people I didn't know. And that was just really, really, really hard. And then, there was just this for lack of a better word, sexism going on. It was like, I remember my team my attendings at Stanford, they were fine, but they were a little dismissive of women, and we were at that point only 6% of surgeons were women, and you really had to outdo yourself. I mean, you could not screw up. The guys could screw up, and they would just say, "Oh well, they gave them another chance." But the woman screws up, and they're just like, "Oh well, you're obviously not cut out to be a surgeon, obviously." So you really had to be careful. And I remember they were just getting started in learning laparoscopic surgery, and they brought this guy in from the South. I forget what his name was. I want to say it was Billy Bob somebody, but he comes in. He's this laparoscopic guru guy when they were just getting going, and he looks around, and I'm the only. I was a chief resident, and I was the only woman surgeon there. And he says very loudly something like, "Women shouldn't be in surgery, or women shouldn't be surgeons." And my attendings were all around me, and nobody said a word. And I felt like, wow, why aren't you sticking up for me, And so I didn't know what to say, and I was scared. And then something just came in my mind, and I looked him right in the eyes, and I said, "What are you afraid of?" That's what I said to him. And
Love that.
That shut him up. It just shut him up. It was like, because you don't attack somebody unless you're thinking that somebody's going to be able to, take you out, right? Why would you, right? What are you afraid of? So anyway, I'll never forget that. But it was just that kind of mentality, and I felt that my whole career. There's been so off and on, politics will hurt you bad. It's you got to be careful. Even if you do, honestly, it feels like even if you do everything right, and even if you feel like you're being as nice and sweet as you can be to everyone, somehow somebody will always try to take you out. And yeah, that happened to me a couple times.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry you experienced that, but in spite of that, you're here and you are such an icon. So it really did not even affect you, did not phase you. So what sort of advice do you have for Native students in these spaces, or wanting to be in these spaces?
Sure. I think that there's safety and security in numbers. I think that you should make sure that you know a lot of people who are not they're Native people in medicine. they don't have to be in surgery, I mean, because there's such a small number in surgery right now, but they don't have to be in surgery. They need to be in medicine. You need to have people who are gonna back you up, and they're gonna be there for you. You know, they're gonna um, uh, be the ones that pick you up if you fall on the floor, you know, and support you psychologically, culturally, mentally, everything. Um, then we have to build our own circles. In fact, we are talking about, with Association of American Indian Physicians, building a Native surgeons group, okay, within that, as well as also at AWS, there's been talk about that too. We're so small, but still, I think, where would young women, or young, not just women, where would young Native surgeons come for mentorship if we're not telling them where we are? Well, you know what I mean? If we aren't at least in some way an organization that's there, that's hopefully we can have people all coming together to help mentor students, give them early experiences like I had, get them ready, you know, coach them. All those things can mean a lot. It makes a huge world of difference, I think. I don't know. You guys may have talked about that already.
We touched on mentorship and the importance of that, but it just, you emphasize how important that is. So thank you. I guess since we're coming up on a little bit over an hour, we'll kind of move on to some of the other questions. Do any of you have any traditional phrases or words of wisdom that have given you strength in difficult times that you'd like to share?
Mine's simple. I'll tell you what it is, but before I do that, I want to follow up on a couple things that Dr. Alvord said. So I went to Stanford for a residency, and I hope it will bring you satisfaction knowing that my graduating class was five. So the program really, you know, came so just so different. It must have been so different than what you went through. But of course, like during that, I think like I was always conscientious of, wow, what did the women before me do so I could be here? And I think that's something important for all of us to honor, is how hard the first wave of women surgeons who went through training, how they were put to the test and that we get to do what we do because they did it so well, you know, from the beginning, and they made those strong, important first impressions and made it so that we had a place for them take over the place as it were for my class. So I wanted to let you know that they're when I was going through and finishing in 2016, it was very much a culture that was women friendly. And then I want to echo.
Medical school.
This was for
residency.
Yeah,
residency?
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, we had 5 women chiefs and 1 male.
Yeah, we had 4 women chiefs. Yeah, Dr. Collins actually was the first one to recruit women in bigger numbers. I didn't feel it that much inside.
I agree with your point about mentors. They don't have to be surgeons. And for me, like my most important Native mentor was the first Native American medical oncologist, Judith Coward. And even though she was in a different discipline and I expressed my interest in surgery, she's always said, call me Coach K. And she's been coaching me since early on. And eventually, at one point she said, if you do surgical oncology, you'll be the first Native American surgical oncologist. Was able, she's like, there's only one other medical oncologist, and here he is. Here we all are, like in one conference, there's everybody. So it is small, and I think any level of influence, the senior Native students who were like fourth years when I was a first year in medical school, they were role models for me, in making it seem possible to keep plugging away. So you're a role model at every level. But I've delayed, I stalled. Back to Lindsay's question. I think the words I always listen to are follow your heart. I mean, it's not traditional, and it might be cliche, but if like things have not worked out when I stray from that, when I try to follow what someone else advises, that's not like, if it's not sitting right, it doesn't work out. So and that's hard, because sometimes when you have really respected faculty, people who are elder to you, people who are your teachers, like one of the hardest things in the world is to kind of go against that advice and listen to your own. But you have to, because otherwise you might end up in a profession you're not happy in. And if you're not happy in it, I think it's immensely harder to succeed at it. So those are the words I repeat to myself.
I definitely can relate to that, Dr. Erdrich, because there was a time that I almost gave up on going into plastic surgery, and it was actually a GI doc and a retired surgeon who convinced me to take a research year and apply. So, and hopefully, I mean, we'll see how it pans out, but I'm very excited, and I felt the love on Thursday when I got all my invites, so I'm glad. So you're totally right, it doesn't have to be a surgeon or someone within that specialty. Any other words of wisdom or advice, Natasha, Dr. Alvord?
Natasha?
I mean, my grandma was she actually passed away my first year of medical school, and I just remembered, and it turns out I failed 2 courses in that year, and had to redo the whole entire year, even courses that I did pass, and taught me a lot. And I think from that, I really just learned that, as Native people, we go through a lot of different things. We don't talk about it, but we go through a lot. And I think I was like, well, this is like fine. I mean, it wasn't the greatest feeling, but it was like, okay, I've had worse things. And I just thought, I can redo the year. It's just a year. And I think for other students, it's like the end of the world, or, they've never failed at anything. And for me, I was like, I failed before. I failed things in my life as an older, later 30s student. I've gone through life with different kinds of failures, and I think I wasn't scared, but I didn't let it affect me dramatically, where I could easily do it or admit my mistakes. And so I don't know, it's just like an advice. And I think just going back to what Dr. Alvord said is, I was pretty introverted going through everything. And I remember my grandma just being like, you're not very quiet when you're at home. Like, why don't you use your Navajo woman voice? And I realized I used that in the OR, and people listened to me. And it really shocked me, actually, because my voice can get really loud, and I can do that. I can do it. I just was really shy and didn't know how to do that. And when I just let go, I think it really helped boost my confidence as well. So
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Alvord.
Yeah, that was great. I love that. I also have a very strong Navajo grandmother. She's left us. She's been gone a while, but she was one of the first Navajo school teachers and a principal as well. way out in Whitehorse Lake, which is up near Cuba, so it's a little bit north of Crown Point, I guess. Anyway, you know, I think that the phrases I think of, you know, I did have to kind of self-coach myself some of the time, and you know, I would say something like, if it was easy, anybody could do it. You know, like when things get hard, if it was easy, anybody could do it. And then the one, I would make deals with myself. I had a deal where there were 3 things that I would be happy with if I had had something to eat recently, if I'd had enough sleep, or if I'd had a shower recently. And I made this deal with myself that if any 2 of the 3 had been met recently, I would be happy. That I would not ask for all 3, but I would take, that was during residency. I would be happy if 2 of the 3. And that was sort of silly, you know, but it let me allow myself to just go for the basics, not to look further than that, but just go with getting enough to eat, getting enough sleep, and having the energy to make it through the next day. Which is it's kind of wild, but that's kind of what you have to do. I feel like we're on Survivor or something, you know, Survivor surgery, you know, because it can be hard. I mean, the 8-hour work week is in place now, but it wasn't when we were training, and it was crazy sometimes, you know. It was really, sometimes it was crazy. But I just think you know, it's kind of just helpful to just keep going one day at a time, and to, you know, listen to people that are telling you you can do it. Like you, I also had failures. You know, I failed step 1 of the boards, and I was devastated. And you know, you think, oh well, I did 2 years of courses at Stanford and I passed them all. I should be able to pass part 1. You know, well, no. And then I didn't pass it the second time. And at Stanford, if you don't pass it 3 times, you're out, you know. And what I learned through that process was actually not that it was all about organizing material and generating systems of recall. It was not about it was not how much you knew. It was about how you had it organized in your brain. And once I got that system, I found a system that worked really well, and then I passed the darn thing easily, you know. And so it's really, you know, we like to, I love to put myself down, and I can find so many different things and so many different ways to do that. And I have to get rid of the negative little talking voice in my head some of the time, and just, you know, turn the tape off, because otherwise, I would probably talk myself out of believing that I can do something. Yeah. So that's, don't be too hard on yourself, I guess, would be some advice I have. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat, but I think we have kind of come up on all of them. Let's see. I see, Dr. Alvord, you answered a question about the mentorship. I'm not seeing any others, so I guess I just want to thank you all for joining IG Live and for taking the time out of your day to let me interview you. This has been like the highlight, I would say, of medical school so far, so this is truly, truly wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for putting this together.
Thank you.
Yes,
Lindsay.
thank you. And yes, and best wishes to all of you. And my strongest hope that you'll be able to fulfill your goals in your career, and that you have every success that you hope for. And maybe the other thing is, sometimes there's one tiny piece of advice, is sometimes if you don't get down the road you want to be, it's because the universe has another plan for you. And be open to that possibility, and don't be so scared if you wind up going up against a wall, you know. I've had a few walls hit me, you know, and I wanted to be in academic medicine, and I was for a long time, but I'm so much happier, honestly, out in private practice taking care of Native patients and Yakima Valley farm workers and living my best life. And I'm an ice hockey player, so out playing hockey a lot, and you know, so sometimes you know, things can change, and you can do something that you really didn't think that was what you would be best for you, but it might be. So I know you're going to match. You're going to do fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely something to keep in mind as we go through interviews and then rank list and match. But
Exactly.
thank you all so much, Dr. Erdrich, Dr. Alvord, Natasha. You guys have a wonderful rest of your night. If there's any questions as far as reaching out to you from the audience, would you be comfortable sharing your emails or your social media accounts?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think you can find me on Facebook. It's probably easiest, and message me. Probably if you go with Lori Alvord or Lori Arviso Alvord, I should pop up.
Excellent. Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.